Welcome to Native America Calling. From Studio 49 in Albuquerque, I'm Harlan Macasato. For many tribes, membership is becoming more contentious with each new generation. But for three bands of the Ute tribe of Utah, the battle has been going on for more than half a century. In 1954, Congress enacted the Ute Partition and Termination Act that classified 490 members of the Uinta Band of Utes as mixed bloods and terminated their tribal status. They filed a lawsuit to restore their Indian standing, but why are they being met with great resistance from the other bands of the Ute tribe of Utah? Join us as we discuss the Ute Partition and Termination Act right after National Native News.
PRI, Public Radio International.
This is National Native News. I'm Tara Gatewood, sitting in for Antonia Gonzalez. Yesterday's shooting at Virginia Polytechnic Institute, better known as Virginia Tech, has prompted many to consider safety in the schools. A gunman who took the lives of 32 people yesterday created a buzz throughout the nation, Indian country, and the tribal colleges. Tom Davis, Dean of Instruction at Navajo Technical College, says this issue has been on their radar.
We've been working on campus security, campus safety issues now for a little over a year. I think we were originally prompted to do that by the tragedy in Red Lake, Minnesota, at the schools there. But of course, I think what happened at Virginia Tech yesterday has given all of us pause on the campus. We'd like to say that it could not happen here, but of course it can.
Davis also added that the college sends its deepest regards to the university, the victims, and their families. The federal lawsuit filed against a Wisconsin reservation company, Menominee Tribal Enterprises, or MTE, has fired up activists who want the tribal legislature to take control of its business arm. Wisconsin Public Radio's Brian Bull reports.
The federal government filed its suit under the False Claims Act. It alleges MTE falsely billed the Bureau of Indian Affairs for roadwork and fire suppression while spending more than $1 million for replacing equipment and building a garage. Recently, demonstrators stood outside the tribal headquarters, saying Menominee leaders need to take charge of their business dealings and that the federal suit could threaten their sovereignty. Menominee Tribal Chairwoman Lisa Waka has pledged support for MTE. Waka says the company, which also runs a sawmill on the reservation, is a separate entity from the tribe.
We kind of have a unique constitution, and our constitution separates our forest and mill operation from the tribal structure. So it's not as easy as saying, well, we're just going to take over this operation. We just can't do it constitutionally because we are sworn to uphold the Constitution.
Waka says right now the Menominee are reviewing their options with legal consultants to address concerns discussed between tribal leaders and demonstrators. MTE executives are defending against the charges, saying they've been in settlement talks with federal officials to resolve allegations of unauthorized use of BIA monies. The tribe's chief forester and a contractor who manage tribal forest land and BIA funds were also named in the suit. For National Native News, I'm Brian Bull.
U.S. Senator Tim Johnson continues to work on movement of the so-called FEMA trailers from the southern United States to Indian reservations. South Dakota Public Broadcasting's Gary Allenbolt reports.
Johnson has written a letter to Interior Secretary Dick Kempthorne in an effort to get the trailers moved from Arkansas to reservations across the U.S. The housing was used to shelter displaced residents after Hurricane Katrina struck in 2005. The Federal Emergency Management Agency now regards those trailers as excess property. Officials are working to transfer the buildings through the General Services Administration. Johnson has been looking to move the trailers to be used for native housing. He has sponsored legislation allowing FEMA to work with other federal agencies when appropriate, along with the Department of the Interior. The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights reports that nationwide about 90,000 Native American families are homeless or living in substandard housing. In Johnson's letter, he reminds Secretary Kempthorne that Congress has intended the trailers preferably be used on reservations. For National Native News, I'm Gary Ellenbold.
On this day in 1878, the Sheldon Jackson School was founded on Baranof Island in Sitka, Alaska. Presbyterian missionaries started it as an industrial and training school for the Tlingit community. This is National Native News. I'm Tara Gatewood.
Reach over 1 million listeners with a message here on the only daily Native newscast. Call 505-277-5354. National Native News is produced at KUNM in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding from Sonosky, Chambers, Saxe, Anderson, Miller, and Munson, defending Native American interests throughout the United States, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, with additional support from the University of New Mexico. Visit us online at nativenews.net. This is PRI, Public Radio International.
This is the Tuesday, April 17th edition of Native America Calling. I'm your host, Harlan Macasato. In the 1950s, the U.S. government was ready to get rid of their so-called Indian problem. They were looking for ways to get out of the agreements they had made with tribes concerning land and natural resources, among other things. And one of the methods that they began to use became known as termination. Tribes, through illegal acts of Congress, were being terminated by the government, on paper at least, and their lands, their rights, their identities were stripped away with the swoop of a pen. It was happening all across Indian country. Tribes were making more concessions and compromising more of their rights during this termination era. And it was just another dark chapter in the history of the United States and tribal nations. Now, since then, many of the tribes that were terminated through incredible perseverance and love for their culture and their people, they had their tribal status restored, along with their sovereign rights as tribal nations. But perhaps a darker chapter in the history annals is about the tribes that were not restored. And one of those tribes is the Uinta Band of Ute Indians. In 1954, Congress enacted the Ute Partition and Termination Act that classified 490 members of the Uinta Band of Utes as mixed bloods and terminated their tribal status. But two other Ute bands of Utah, the Uncompahgre and the White River bands, were not terminated. Now, a bitter struggle ensued, and this Termination Act has been a source of contention among the Ute people on a continual basis for more than 50 years now, and is even more heated today than ever. Now, why have they filed a lawsuit to restore their Indian standing, and why are they being met with resistance from the other bands of the Ute tribe of Utah? Well, tune in today, and you're going to find out. If you'd like to make a comment, our toll-free number is 1-800-996-2848. That's 1-800-99-NATIVE. Give us a call, and we're going to get you on the air here in a few minutes. You know the routine. Joining us from Roosevelt, Utah on the telephone is Oranna Felter. She is the lead plaintiff in the Felter versus Kempthorne case that was filed in 2002, I believe, which seeks to reverse the Ute Partition and Termination Act. And she was just a minor. I believe she was about 10 or 11 years old when her tribal status was taken away by this act of Congress in 1954, and she is a member of the Uinta Band of Ute Indians. Welcome to Native America Calling, Oranna.
Thank you.
Good to have you with us. Also joining us here in Studio 49 is Dennis Chappabitty. He is the lead counsel for the plaintiffs in the Felter versus Kempthorne case. He is a member of the Comanche Nation, and he is also Chiricahua Apache, and his grandmother was a prisoner of war held by the U.S. government. Welcome to Native America Calling, Dennis.
Good morning, Harlan. It's good to be here once again.
Yeah, good to have you back. Oranna, first of all, can you tell our listeners about this Termination Act of 1954? Most people are not familiar with this, and I mentioned you were, just a small girl, but how exactly did this congressional act come about?
Do you know what? I was 9 years old when in 1954 when this all came about. And there was 260 miners out of 490 that were affected through this termination. And the best one here to really give you a good history of that is Cal Hackford, because he's lived through that. And that's why I started doing a lot of my investigation and stuff, is because when I got older, I couldn't figure out what in the heck happened to me. I was Indian one day and white the next. At least that's how they put it,
Mm-hmm.
And but here's Cal. He can tell you more about how that termination came and how it came down the channel. So we weren't really planning on this, but and actually,
Yeah, go ahead. Who do we have on the phone now?
It's Cal Hackford. He's one of the other lead plaintiffs. There's 5 of us lead plaintiffs, and he's one of them.
Okay.
The termination come about over the Colorado judgment funds and the difficulties that it raised amongst the bands. And the White Rivers and Uncompahgrees didn't want to share with the Uintas, at least to those that in their minds were not Indian, that didn't meet their specifications. So through the tribal attorney and the politicians, a plan was designed by which they would separate them. And this put in the process of the termination procedure. And that was the setting that brought about the Termination Act.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Cal. Let's see. Now, Dennis, you wrote that this act is unique among all the termination acts of the era. So what makes this case unique?
Well, Harlan, what happened is when Oranna called me up about 6 years ago and I started looking in and investigating the case, I was so shocked at all the duplicitous dealings, all the underhanded fraud, all the lies and deception that the U.S. government had held out to the Uintas. Now, one of the things that was really overpowering in my mind was the fact that the Uintas had never voluntarily agreed to their termination. A congressman named Watkins, Senator Watkins, a Mormon church member, as well as various members of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, just told Congress that, yep, the mixed bloods want to be terminated. They absolutely lied. So the act of Congress that culminated the Ute Petition Act is, in fact, a fraud on the U.S. Congress. Now, when I looked at this and looked at the length of time that this case, our cases had been filed trying to fight that particular evil act, I looked and said, man, this is such an egregious thing. Why has this case been forgotten? I've seen a lot of advocacy out there in the 50 years that this thing has happened. Why have the terminated mixed blood Uintas case been forgotten? And I took it mainly because my grandmother, Minnie Zariga Nicholas, was a prisoner of war of the U.S. government. And I really felt compassionate toward the case and the fact that they had kept this thing so long. I also looked at the issue of the trauma that many of them had experienced through this very bad act. And I really warmed up to it. I warmed up to the clients, Oranna and the others, and we went forward, filed a lawsuit in 2002, and the case was dismissed by Judge Roberts in the U.S. District Court, District of Columbia. We appealed it up, and what happened was very good. We still are alive, and I want to tell the public out there that we're alive. We need your support. We need you to get informed about the case. The case is still going. And I believe that was out of the compassion of the 3-judge panel that this case is kept breathing. And just to give you a brief, hopefully non-legal explanation of the case, when the Uintas were terminated, they owned very valuable property. They owned very valuable water rights, mineral rights, as well as claims to a particular judgment that had been entered back prior to their termination. Well, the U.S. government, when they were terminated, said, you're no longer Indian, you're whites as far as we're concerned, so therefore we're cutting off your right to the pre-Ute Petition Act vested property that you should have owned and carried forward. Now, another thing that was very shocking to me is that one of the vehicles set up to help the Uintas go forward and become the mainstream folks in America, the Ute Distribution Corporation, that corporation now exists, but it's also populated with white businesses. One particular business called Wayne Hummer, a large insurance company in Chicago, Illinois, owns vast shares of what should have been my clients. The Mormon Church also owns shares, but they've been masquerading for years and years, pretending to be Indians. They basically, Harlan, lifted the identity of my clients, and through hook and crook and dereliction of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, they were able to take my client's identity and take it as their own, and they still are out there holding my client's identity and getting immensely wealthy. Now, if you look back at what happened, Harlan, the Uintas, I've come to the conclusion that Senator Watkins, the proponent of termination, and Bureau of Indian Affairs officials knew that my clients would be picked clean by the scavengers. They were out there waiting in Utah. They were waiting on the limbs, looking greedily at my client's interests, and they knew that the unsophisticated Uintas who didn't ever agree to their termination were going to be prone to overreaching. And the other thing were the lawyers involved. John Boyden was a very, very double-dealing lawyer. He did my clients in. And I think if you go to the Hopi situation, look at the historical records there, you'll find that he also did some double-dealing and some double crosses there with the Hopi.
Okay, I want to just remind our listeners, if you just tuned in, now we're talking about several issues, really. We're talking about the Ute Partition and Termination Act. So there's the issue of termination. There's the issue of federal recognition, which we'll get to because the terminated band of Utes is trying to regain federal recognition. There's also, the issue of internal fights over tribal resources. And let me ask you this. Do you think that the tribes in this day and age, do you think that tribes are moving in the right direction where we're becoming more exclusive in this day and age over tribal membership? Do you think that the tribes should start looking at ways to become more inclusive? That's one question. Now, do we have to scrutinize who is and who is not native? That's another question I want to ask. Should we apply more scrutiny? Or is that not really the Indian way? Okay, now and here's a case that we're talking about today. This whole case about the Ute Partition and Termination Act, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of what's going on over at Cherokee with the Cherokee Freedman case that's going down in Oklahoma. Only this case happened 50 years ago, and it was even more devious. I'm not saying the Cherokee thing was devious, but this was a very devious case, and in which a whole band of a tribe was terminated. They said, you guys are no longer members. Okay, and the terminated members are still fighting to have their federally recognized tribal status restored. So if you'd want to join in on the conversation, give us a call, 1-800-99-NATIVE. That's 1-800-996-2848.
Right, Harlan, thanks. And this situation, this genocidal situation that has been perpetuated by an act of Congress that's still on the books, has spawned two very well-written books, very thorough research books called Termination's Legacy by M. Warren Metcalf, as well as The Dispossessed, The Cultural Genocide of the Mixed Blood Uintas by Parker Nielsen. And I know both of these individuals, and they did some very good research. Now, one of the things here, Harlan, too, is that I was amazed when I looked at it that the U.S. government allowed their guard to go down. Typically, they should have had a number of years that they had to protect my clients because of the trust interest involved. And the Bureau of Indian Affairs just let their guard down, willingly watched the scavengers fly in, and they were picking my clients clean, and they took valuables from them. And that was really disappointing. Now, if we look back at that time and era, we had a number of tribes, the Menominees, the Klamath, right, the Klamath, and others who were the first parade of Indians shown the road forced into the boxcars and sent to the gas chambers, so to speak. And those tribes are now restored. Now, we ask ourselves, why? Why is this? Well, the short explanation is this. What happened, Harlan, was that the entire Ute tribe, the Uncompahgre and the White Rivers, were supposed to be terminated also. But through some devious manipulation of the existing law back then, the act set a 50% blood limit. If you fell below 50%, you were considered a mixed blood. If you were above 50. Now, that went at odds with the Indian Reorganization Act 1/4 blood requirement. So the Uintas turned out to be the first experimental group of Indians out of this act. The act set a very high level of determination of who was Indian and who wasn't. I mean, we've got Cherokees out there that are thousands and thousands of a fraction. Now, Harlan, you also spoke about what is a true Indian. Here, my clients, the terminated Utes, are heart and soul true Uintas from day one. You can never strip that out unless you cut their heart open and pull their hearts out and throw it and stomp it on the sidewalk. Well, also, you have to look at in comparison, the blood quantum issue. That's a federal government thing. That's a wicked type of thing that our Indian tribes have bought into now. Now they're using that blood quantum to make distinctions between who is an Indian and who ain't. I mean, I know some Indians out there that have absolutely no heart and soul as Indian people who are full blood, and I know some out there, for instance, Oranna and Cal and Alvin Denver, who's also there. I know them to be true in heart Uinta people. They practice their traditional ways, their spiritual ways, and they believe in it, and yet they're still out there. Whereas you have a Cherokee or whoever out there who's 2000s that just got his card last week, and he's running around saying, I'm an Indian. Well, this is really abominable. We've got to get rid of the act. Now, another point I want to stress, Harlan, is that tribes should be coming on board. They should be urging Congress. They're Congress people, they're senators. They should be urging their representatives to come forward and to eradicate this evil law.
But Dennis, let me make this point. A lot of tribes, respecting the sovereignty of other tribes, don't want to get into, when it comes to, internal matters. They want to respect that, and because they would want the same respect from tribes when it comes down to their internal matters.
Well, Harlan, there's a simple response to that. There are immoral laws and immoral events and actions out there that you've got to see beyond that little excuse. That you've got to look beyond that excuse. Right now, we have this group of Uintas that are there. They've been terribly damaged in their identity, their lives, while they're watching other people enjoy the benefits. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Wayne Hummer, and numerous other non-Indians that now hold their identity who are still getting money, who constitute the Ute Distribution Corporation. So I can't buy the excuse that, we're respecting the sovereignty of the Ute tribe as it constituted now, because you have to look beyond that and say, no, we can't do that because there was a terrible injustice done here.
Okay, Oranna. Yeah, go ahead, Oranna.
Not only that, Dennis, until Public Law 671 is repealed and laid to rest, the Ute tribe is at the risk of termination, and they should be supporting us Uintas, because if they don't support us, they are supporting termination for every tribe in the United States. And if I was these other Indian tribes, I would be a little bit worried about it.
Well, tell me, Oranna, why, from your point of view, why it is so important to have this act repealed?
It's really important to me to have my Indian identity restored back to me, and to have the land base, everything that we've lost in termination, to be able to have my kids recognized as Native Americans that they should be. My kids are just as important as any other of these Indian kids that's around here, and I want them. They know their Indian religion, and I think they should be federally recognized.
A lot of people will point to distributions or tribal per capitas and say that's the reason why people want to get on the tribal rolls.
Could I speak to you just a moment, sir?
Cal Hackford.
Okay, Cal.
The issue you raised about tribal sovereignty and stuff, and a lot of tribes don't want to get involved in internal affairs. When you laid out the true picture, if you invited someone to stay at your home, at what point in time can they vote you out of it under the guise of tribal sovereignty? Where is the justice and honor in it? The Ute tribe is a fictitious tribe. It didn't come into existence until 1937. It had no land base as Ute tribe prior to 1937, but they took under the guise of Ute tribe what the Uintas owned because they were living in their house. It isn't about per capita payments, mixed bloods wanting in it. It's because they have been robbed, and all they want is justice. Thank you.
Okay.
All we want is what we should have had in the first place.
Okay. All right, I want to go to the phone lines right now. I want to bring in our first caller, Jim, up in Toronto, Ontario, listening on Aboriginal Voices Radio. You're on the air, Jim.
Hi. I think it's my first point was if you're getting absolutely nowhere with the United States government, is there any possibility at all that it could be taken to the World Court? And I know that sounds maybe a little bit far-fetched, but when we look at some of the other things that have been done, at the end of the Second World War, when they decided about Palestine and Israel and the results, things that have come about through that and the bloodshed and people losing their homeland, and this is just as egregious a thing going on here. And if we're getting nowhere, maybe we need to get support from countries outside of the United States to shame the United States doing something about it.
The problem is right now is that this administration that's in the White House, it's obvious that they don't respect the World Court or other countries' decisions. That they just don't. It's pretty obvious to me, Dennis.
Well,
Okay.
great. That's a very great question from Toronto. What we're doing right now is we're using the American justice system to prove up the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals in D.C. for the D.C. Circuit. They proved up at least right now. So had they not, we would walk off and just shake our heads saying, where's the American justice system? Where's the rightness? Where is this long journey for justice? Are they just going to put us in the can and lock us away? Well, there are people that would like to see us go away and be forgotten because they now hold vast sums of, we all see it in the oil situation around the world. These people are benefiting from the vast glut of interest going into the Roosevelt, Utah area. And basically,
And you're talking about oil shale and natural gas mainly.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we would ask you that you look at our website, which is www.undeclaredutes.net. Undeclared Utes, one word. You'll find a wealth of information. We need your support. We need the support from our brothers and sisters in Canada to get aware of this and to help us. But I agree, we should go outside, but we're trying to prove up the United States justice system. And once we exhaust that and get nowhere, then we will start going out. I think it's abominable also that the United States is out there condemning other nations in the world for being brutal, for being dictatorial to their citizens. And here, right in the middle of one of the most religious states in the world, we have our people still condemned to a genocidal act.
Okay. All right. Hey, Jim, thanks for your call from Toronto.
You're welcome. I could just add that your United States is not alone. Canada also has the same shameful policies, and I have to say that just very quickly that anyone, whether they're a full blood or whatever percentage they have, and I'm certainly by no means a full blood, but I am Native in my heart and soul, and I am with you on this, and I will send my prayers. It's all I can do right now, but my prayers and speak to all of my.
Jim, going to have to cut you off. Got to go to a break. We're talking about the Ute Partition and Termination Act. If you want to join in, the number to call, 1-800-996-2848. We'll be back after this break. Whether it's in a short verse, a song, or a speech in one's native tongue, poetry helps us express and record the world we live in. How have native writers taken ownership of this European form, and is there a changing of the guard among our indigenous storytellers? I'm Harlan Macasato. Join us as we talk about native poetry on the next Native America Calling.
Native America Calling is a production of Comanche Broadcast Corporation with funding from Indian Country Today, publishing national news important to all Native communities, the source for American Indian news since 1981. Subscription information is available on the web at indiancountry.com.
Albuquerque is known for powwows and balloons, but it's also a great place to meet and do business year-round. The more than 300 members of the American Indian Chamber of Commerce of New Mexico invite you to visit Albuquerque, starting with AICCNM.com.
Welcome back to Native America Calling. I'm your host, Harlan Macasato. I'd like to say hello to our listeners tuned in to KYUK in Bethel, Alaska, KWSO in Warm Springs, Oregon, and KUYI in First Mesa, Arizona. Also, hello to our listeners tuned in on the internet at nativeamericacalling.com and at Native Voice One at nv1.org. Today we're talking about the Ute Partition and Termination Act and federal recognition and internal fighting within tribes. And if you want to join in on the conversation, give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. That's 1-800-99-NATIVE. And if you get a busy signal, keep trying. We're going to try to get you in. On the phone line with us from Roosevelt, Utah is Oranna Felter. She is the lead plaintiff in the case called Felter versus Kempthorne, which seeks to reverse the Ute Partition and Termination Act. And also joining us here in Studio 49 is Dennis Chappabitty. He's lead counsel in the case Felter versus Kempthorne. And also we're hearing from Cal Hackford, who's also a lead plaintiff in the federal case that we're talking about. And so if you want to join in, give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. And welcome back, Dennis. Welcome back, Oranna. And, one thing I wanted to ask was, Dennis, you compared this case to Wounded Knee. You compared it to the Mountain Massacre, Mountain Meadows Massacre, and also the Tulsa Race Riot of 1921, and then even took it as far as comparing it to the Holocaust. Is that? Do you really believe in that comparison?
You're darn right, Harlan. I believe in it 1,000%. We need to look at what was done to my clients. We need to look at how it was done, and we need to look, more importantly, at the intent of the people that pushed it down my client's throat and said, you'll take this regardless. And we need to look at the effect it had. I want to make one mention here. While the sons and daughters of our proud Uintas are out there, they're fighting in Iraq, they're in the military. Many of our people, Alvin Denver Sr., fought in World War II only to come back to find his identity stripped and powerless to do anything about it. I mean, Harlan, my God, this is such a horrendous thing to feel so defenseless, and this trauma has really hurt. I know today, unfortunately, we're talking about another chapter of trauma in America with the massacre at Virginia Tech. And my clients suffered an equal amount of trauma, being hands tied behind their back by federal officials and lawyers who were supposedly to represent them, and then no one came to their aid. I know there are some fine lawyers out there that have fine histories of being practitioners and protecting Indian rights, and many organizations that are very good advocates, but no one came to their aid. And I'm just really shocked that has occurred, and it's a hands-off attitude. People are frightened. They're afraid. They're cowardly. They don't want to come forward and to put their shoulders behind my clients and get Congress to repeal the Ute Petition Act, nor do they want to come in and offer any assistance during the litigation that we're doing concurrently. So I'm just really shocked that these people are just left out in the cold. It's just an indictment on all the supposed Indian advocates out there who come to the aid of many causes, and that's who I want to try to raise the conscience level to here and discuss those points.
Oranna, I'm told that your mother died in an accident. Can you speak to that? And was it an accident in your mind?
My mom, back in the 50s, was a spokesman for the Uinta band. And she attended all of the meetings when a lot of the people went back to Washington talking about termination. They found out some of the people had actually snuck back there and was trying to ram this termination law through. She got up in what they call the longhouse and told the Indian Uintas that these people that went back to Washington needed to be fired. And she named them all. And she said, and the Ute tribe, Ute people, Uinta people needs to never hire these people back again. Then termination, and my mom also sat on the first affiliated Ute board that was organized to represent the terminated 490. So she was a very well-educated, very well-respected woman. But as the termination came about, the stock shares was handed over to the people. Stock shares that represented gas, oil, and mineral rights from Ute Distribution Corporation was handed over to 490 people, except for the miners, and theirs went into a trust. But hand over 10 shares of Ute Distribution stock shares to people that has had to go to the superintendent to even be able to sell a cow and give them their whole interest in the gas, oil, and mineral rights on the reservation. They didn't know how to handle it. Most of them traded them off, sold them, traded them for cores, sold them, or traded them for tires, grocery bills. The Ute Indian tribe ended up with 800, almost 900 shares. The Ute tribe, who's supposed to be our people, is making a massive amount of money off of us. And that really burns me. Ute Distribution stock shares has no value on them. Yet, these people were in here scooping them up because they knew the mixed bloods didn't know how to handle them. The mixed bloods didn't know what they were. And anyway, my mom spoke out on a lot of this stuff, but through termination, we lost our Indian Health Services, our educational grants. My brother was going to Utah State to be an accountant. He didn't have no money to finish his education, so he had to stop. My little sister had nephritis, a kidney disease. She ended up because my mom had sold everything, her lands, her UDC stock shares, everything she could get her hands on. My mom and dad got a divorce. They were both alcoholics. My brother, who was 32 years old, died of cirrhosis of the liver. And none of my people could live in a white man's world. They couldn't live in two worlds, the Indian world and the white man world. They were born and raised Indians, and that's who we are. My mother was killed in a car accident with a brown beer bottle stuck in the top of her head when they found her. And there's been a lot of questions about how she really did die, because there was a lot of people up here that didn't like what she was telling the people because she felt bad about what had happened. She was there. She knew what was coming down, but they couldn't stop it. The wheels was already set in motion.
Let's go to the phone lines now. Let's bring in Barbara, who's in Sun Lakes, Arizona, listening on the Internet. Welcome to the program, Barbara.
Hi, Harlan. My name is Barbara Satir, and I'm one of the original 490 on that mixed blood roll. I wanted to thank Dennis for mentioning those two books, which are pretty good accounts of what happened. And I would recommend another book, which is Fire on the Plateau by Charles Wilkinson from the University of Colorado in Boulder. His chapter 8 is about the Uintas, and in my opinion, this is the very best account of what happened to our people, and it puts it in a bigger context generally of what happened in the Southwest and the rip-off of resources from Indian tribes for other people's benefits. So I would recommend you read that. Mm-hmm. But unlike Oranna, I was a minor. I was only 12 years old when this law was passed, and 13, 14 when it was made effective. So not knowing who we are as people didn't really set in, and we realized what happened, that something bad happened to us by the time we were 19, 20, 21 years old. And we had to go and ask for money to go to college. And then one year when I went, they said, well, you're not eligible. So I said, why not? I've been there before. And they said, well, you're not eligible now because nobody's interested in the education program. And that was a lie. It was because they didn't want us there.
So in your mind, this is a matter of the U.S. government dividing and conquering, well, not necessarily conquering, but at least dividing in an attempt to conquer people and to their own benefit and to the benefit of corporate interests.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And I know that my mom was, she was the BIA superintendent's secretary, and she used to keep the minutes of all of these so-called meetings and consultations that the government was doing, and she had the official record of all of that. And she would really be angry when she would come home from work, and she would cry about what was happening and say she didn't think it was right. And somewhere there is a copy of all of those minutes of those meetings, and that's one of my quests, is to find that record.
Okay. Barbara, hold on. Dennis has some comments.
Yes, Barbara, I'm glad that you mentioned Professor Wilkinson in his book. I want to commend the professor for his courage in coming forward and writing a letter endorsing the repeal, or not endorsing, but asking for the repeal and supporting our efforts to get the UPA wiped off the books. And I'm glad you mentioned him, and I want to commend Professor Wilkinson for having that courage and moral stance. That was very good for us.
Yeah, I think it would be good if we brought him in to do an educational seminar for our group, for everybody, because a lot of people don't understand this issue. It's way, way complex.
Right, Barbara. And, there's so many layers complicating this and we've come across fairly good accounts of records being burned, buried, destroyed. And we have all that skullduggery going on. And the thing that really makes me angry is back when termination was being proposed on the Uintas, the U.S. government used the already existing divisions between the bands quite effectively. And that is really a very immoral type of tactic to use. But that's the U.S. government, Bureau of Indian Affairs. They've done it quite successfully for centuries.
Okay.
Yes, and it is very much like what happened in the Holocaust, and I know that Hitler got his idea for the Holocaust from the way the federal Indian policy was in the United States.
Right.
Barbara, thanks for your call. We appreciate you tuning in and appreciate you calling in.
Well, Harlan, I want to add that Dylan S. Meyer, who had just come from a successful tenure as managing the Japanese-American internee program from World War II, jumped over and began being actively involved in the termination era manipulations. So they jumped from World War II and internment of the Japanese-Americans and right over into Uinta, and he was there present and well doing his dirty deeds again.
Okay, let's take another phone call. Let's bring in another caller listening on the internet. John in Temecula, California. You're on the air. Hello,
Good
John.
morning. Hi, Harlan. I just want to call in and commend Mr. Chappabitty and Oranna, who's somebody I consider to be one of the strongest people I know, for continuing their efforts to right this wrong. Unfortunately, it's something that is not contained within the Partition Act, but there's a huge movement, not only here in California, but nationwide, to exclude tribal members, not only from enrolling, but getting rid of tribal members from their tribes, people who have been members for years.
Disenrolling.
Disenrolling people.
Okay.
And it's a shame. I consider it, and many others consider it, a decade of dishonor that has started to occur here in California. But we've found out that it's been going on for quite some time in other parts of the United States, and we're trying to do some stuff about it. And everything that Oranna and Mr. Chappabitty have talked about, we support them 100%. We know that they're working very hard. Our attorney, my family's attorney, who also represents the Cherokee freedmen, and John Veely is also working hard on these things. So there's very few people in Indian country who are willing to stand up for the individual people who make up the tribes, who make up these governments, to ensure that their rights are protected and what we have to say is being heard.
All right.
Thank you for that comment, John. And you raise a point. There are very few of us out there that are champions for the people that are at the bottom of the totem pole and kicked around by their tribal governments. It's not a very popular, well-paying type of thing, but we have to do it, John. And I'm there with John Veely, trying to raise a consciousness and knowledge of the people about these deeds, bad deeds, and we're going to stick in there with you.
Yeah, so we want to thank you, and of course all of our support goes out to you and Oranna. Whatever we can do, and there's some stuff going on here in California that we're working on that I think will hopefully benefit everybody else also. And I know that the same goes for you. Everybody who's working on this issue is thinking not just of their clients or themselves, but they're thinking of the bigger picture on how to do something that's going to benefit everybody who's being excluded or being denied or has been the victim of policies of the federal government or even their own tribal governments that just fly against everything that Indians believe in.
John, and you well know that we have to run up against many senators and congressmen that are very, very hard-pressed to even get involved here because of the power and the political influence that a lot of the rich tribes employ to keep them from getting involved, in our causes. Yeah. And we're dealing with Orrin Hatch in Utah, and you can imagine how powerful he is. And we've urged him to jump on board and get compassionate, but that's a very difficult job to sell to him and his power structure and political friends.
Okay. Hey, John, thanks for your call from Temecula, California. We appreciate it. And if you just tuned in, we're talking about the termination and disenrollment and a lot of different issues that are taking effect in Indian country. So give us a call right now if you want to join in, 1-800-996-2848. That's 1-800-99-NATIVE. Let's go to Emily in Blackfoot, Idaho, listening on KISU. Hi, Emily.
Hello. I am one of the original terminated youths. I was 21 years old at the time, and as Oranna said, none of us knew anything about stock shares. I was raised on the reservation, educated in government boarding schools, and someone there, after this, it's my understanding that 82 people voted for termination. At the very least, there should have been a secretarial election in which everyone over 18 got to vote after the ramifications of termination were explained to them. I knew about it. I was living at Fort Hall married to a showman. I knew about it when I got a letter in the mail telling me I was terminated. I didn't even really know what that was until I found out, I had no more rights as an Indian. I couldn't go down and hunt or fish on my reservation until Oranna took that to court. But there have been several times this has tried to be overturned, and it's gotten nowhere, so I hope that something happens here. And when they talk about the stock shares, someone down there gave out a list with names and addresses of the terminated youths, because I didn't have a phone at the time. A white businessman from Roosevelt called me and offered to buy my stocks. I went to Fort Duchesne and I asked a member of the board of directors, whose name was Lorena Orge, what are these? And she said, they're not worth anything, you may as well sell them. And we believe deliberately they withheld, payments on those to make us believe they were worthless. Someone was in cahoots with those white businessmen. So most of us lost our stocks. We lost our identity. We still go back and go to the Sundance and things like that, but my brother's still Sundanced. But still, we were nobody. And that's what I'd like to say.
All right, Emily, thanks for your call from Blackfoot, Idaho. Dennis?
Harlan, I might mention one thing. Bureau of Affairs officials that were very sympathetic and very peeved about what was going on back then, they were promptly removed and sent somewhere else. So that was another response U.S. government had with the federal officials that tried to stop that.
Okay, Cal, is that you?
No, this is Alvin Denver.
Alvin Denver, okay.
First of all, I'd like to say Macwass, Emily, and Barbara. That means how are you doing? Hello. The thing I want to say about this whole situation, just as Emily had mentioned, I went through the same thing. Of course, I didn't know we was terminated until 1975 because I was living out of state at the time. I got involved in what's going on back in the 80s. I've done a lot of research for this group. Very proud of who I am. My dad, Alvin Denver Sr., died of a broken heart because of what happened to him. And since then, I have been, educating myself into the white man ways. I still at heart am an Indian, even though I've been terminated. And anybody out there that thinks that this is fun, they need to come here and visit us and see what's going on and get the true facts, which is not put in any of our history books, to the children or to the people of the state of Utah. Another thing, too, is the public laws that are on the record today can still terminate the full-bloods. And the sooner they realize that, the better off things will be here. If they get terminated, they're going to be worse off than we are, because the Ute tribe owns nothing. And when they get terminated, they're not going to get anything. And the courts have told the full-bloods here that they don't own anything. And over the years, Cal Hackford and Oranna and them have worked diligently to get this thing straightened out with no response from anybody. And when Dennis came along, that was just like an angel had been sent to us. All
right,
you, Dennis.
Yes, thank you, Alvin. And I think I mentioned before that your father fought proudly in World War II, only to come back to be stripped and handcuffed and have his identity and property stolen from him.
All right, let's go back to the phone lines. Let's bring in Michael up in Anchorage, Alaska, listening on KNBA. Mike, thanks for holding.
Hey, I think this is a good. My father's in World War II too, but the Alaska Native tribes never voted on statehood, and we never voted on the Alaska Native Land Claims Settlement Act. And our children born after 71 have no Native Land Claims settlement, and I think that's what's going on with the Ute tribe. I think it should be a fine example to file a lawsuit to transfer all jurisdiction to tribe concerning tribal sovereignty, tribal issues, and tribal people. We have enough educated people to take over nationally.
Yeah, Mike, I just don't see that happening.
I do. And I'm part Swedish too, and as you notice, I always been a warrior. But thank you for letting me have my comment.
Okay, Michael, I appreciate your comment. I just don't see decisions, these types of decisions being transferred into some type of national tribal court. Well, there's not one, first of all. Dennis, any comment?
Yes, it would be very difficult. We're dealing with a long-standing, shameful dark chapter of American history, and Oranna, Alvin, and Cal and I have got our hands full just working on that aspect and working our rears off to get to the point that we have with convincing the American justice system that we do have a right to proceed to litigate this in a court of law. And I want to mention that there's the law side. There are the procedural issues and all the complications, but there's a compassionate side. There's a human side. One of the men at one of our meetings told a story about his dad walking into the house one night, tired, dejected, and he got down on a chair and cried. He said, "I'm no longer Indian."
Let's take one more call. Let's bring in Regina in Isleta Pueblo, listening on KUNM. Hi, Regina.
Good morning, gentlemen. Hi, Dennis. It's Regina.
Hi, Regina.
God, I have plenty of words to say, but very few time. All I can say is this gentleman is a prophet. He is the epitome of justice, and I'm just so awestruck. I mean, it's critical.
Are you talking about me or Dennis?
Hey, Regina, I'll have to remember you in the next giveaway.
Yeah.
No, that's not necessary. Believe me, you've helped me and others in our moment of need. But here's the dangerous aspect of what's going on here. Most of these politicians are buying this hook, line, and sinker, and essentially they're allowing and permitting the federal government to go along with the campaign of destroying tribal sovereignty, destroying the culture, destroying the essence of who we are. And that's all predicated based on their desire for power, control, and money.
Okay.
And until they heed the call, they're on that gravy train, and they're on the fast track to demise, our demise, their demise.
Right, Regina, and things are made even more complicated. We've got the wily coyote in our midst, which is called gambling. And that's even making things even more dangerous, in my opinion.
Well, and that's another element of this, because we're giving the lowest common denominators of methods of generating revenue on our casino, i.e. tobacco, which is a toxin, carcinogen, it's a poison, gambling, which has an addictive nature. And yet what we fail to do is heed the call and venture off into other sources of generating legitimate revenue so that we can be proud of it.
All right, hey, Regina.
And it's sickening.
I appreciate your call, Regina. Let's go to, Oranna, we're running out of time here. Wanted to give you some a minute or so here for some final comments.
Okay, I wanted to mention that in the 70s, Congress set up a task force, Task Force 10, and they came to terminated and unrecognized Indian tribes and taught to them about how it was affecting them. And then when they got done with their investigation, they went back and reported to Congress what their recommendations was. And on ours, I was one of the ones that went out to the airport and picked them up, took them on the reservation for 3 days, had hearings out to the University of Utah, took pictures of them, and then took them back and put them on the plane. And when they came here, when they got back there and reported, they said the task force recommends further and immediate investigation into the situation on the UNRA reservation involving BIA mismanagement of the trust assets and non-ethical and illegal BIA actions throughout of the termination process. Congress should direct the General Accounting Office to immediately proceed with full and complete investigations of trust mismanagement assets of all terminated.
I think our battery's running out.
In particular, the Klamath Tribe of Oregon and the terminated Indians of Utah.
Okay. All right. Oranna, thanks for being on the program today. Dennis, final comments.
Okay. One last comment here. We will have a exhibit at the Federal Indian Law Conference here in Albuquerque Thursday and Friday, and we'll have flyers laid out, and we'll be more than willing to explain more about the case. We'll also have a list of people who we'd like to have sign who will support and endorse our efforts to get this long injustice on the road again and keep it going. We need the help of everybody. So that's what we'll be at tomorrow at the Marriott Hotel here in Albuquerque. And we certainly appreciate any help that we can get. The website, undeclaredyouths.net.
Okay, Heights. Thanks for being with us today on the program. Dennis Chappabitty from the Comanche Nation. Good to see you.
Thank you, Harlan.
Good to have you on the program. That's going to wrap it up here today, folks. I want to thank our executive producer, Susan Brain, our associate producer and host, Merritt Youngdeer, our associate producer, Tara Gatewood, Antonia Gonzalez from National Native News, and Ethan Stein, the man at the wheel. So that's going to wrap it up. I'm Harlan Nicasito. We're going to come back tomorrow and give you a dose of Native poetry in celebration of National Poetry Month.
Native America Calling is produced at KUNM in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Ford Foundation, with additional support from the University of New Mexico and the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center, located in Albuquerque, serving as the gateway to the 19 pueblos of New Mexico, on the web at indianpueblo.org. Music is provided by Brent Michael Davids. Native America Calling is a production of Comanche Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization located in Anchorage, Alaska. Visit us at nativeamericacalling.com.
Native Voice One, the Native American radio service.